Have you ever felt your mind like a chaotic river, where thoughts, emotions, and worries constantly swirl out of control? You try to push them away, but they keep coming back, stronger, racing, and a sense of being lost in your own life. It is in these moments that many of us begin to ask, is there a way to truly see my mind, to understand who I really am? Imagine a silent space, where you are no longer disturbed by the sound of phones, messages, or the pressures of the outside world. In that silence, you begin to hear things you've never listened to before. Thoughts running wild, emotions rising that you have long tried to suppress, and even fears, regrets, joys, or hidden hopes. You realize that you have been living mostly on autopilot, following habits and reactions, never truly observing your own mind with honesty. There is a story I want to share with you, the story of someone like you, like me, who once thought meditation was a luxury, something meant for people detached from reality. But one day, they decided to sit quietly, even just for a few minutes, and from that moment, everything began to change. They realized that thoughts are not themselves, emotions do not define them, and that there is a part of the mind that is always peaceful and observant, no matter how chaotic the outside world is. Along this journey, there are truly shocking moments, those seconds when everything suddenly becomes clear, when you realize that all pain, anger, disappointment, and worry are just passing waves, and you do not need. You will see yourself in moments of worry, in failures, and in fleeting moments of small but transformative insight. And now, I invite you to embark on this journey with me. A journey that does not. Stories about meditation and self-awareness, where each story is a door leading you closer to understanding your mind and your true self. Are you ready? A collection of inspiring stories about meditation and self-awareness. In modern life, our minds are rarely still. They are like a rushing river, where thoughts, worries, plans, and emotions constantly collide with one another. We try to control them, yet the more we struggle, the more chaotic the mind becomes. There are moments when you realize that you've been living on autopilot, reacting out of habit and knowing very. To escape reality, it is a method that allows us to pause, listen, and observe. When you sit in stillness, you don't try to change anything, nor do you judge what arises. You simply observe what is happening within. Thoughts appear, emotions surge, memories and fears surface, and then pass by like clouds in the sky. Each moment of observation opens a door to realizing that the true nature of the mind is not chaos, nor what you might have imagined, but a state of peaceful awareness, unbound by thoughts or emotions. Through meditation, many people discover that they are not their thoughts. They are not the emotions that arise, whether anger, sadness, or joy. They realize that all of these are just phenomena, waves rising on the ocean of the mind, and it is the act of observing, urging you to ask, can I observe my mind without judgment? Can I find inner peace amid a chaotic world? This journey does not promise to erase all difficulties or make life perfect, but it does promise one thing. You will learn to see your mind as it truly is. You will feel moments of inner freedom, and you will take each step, slowly but surely, on the path of awareness. And overwhelming, it was almost physical. His body responded with headaches, insomnia, and a heaviness that made it hard to get out of bed each morning. He had tried everything, going to the gym, drinking more coffee, even throwing himself into weekend parties just to forget. But the more he ran away, the more his mind weighed him down. Friends told him he needed a long holiday. The stream of thoughts began to slow. James started to feel his breath more clearly. The crisp park air filled his lungs, then left gently. He heard the wind moving through the trees, the laughter of children in the distance. But this time, none of it irritated him. Instead, the sounds blended into a simple, natural rhythm. In that moment, James realized, for the first time in months, his mind was quiet. A silence not born of control, but of release. His body loosened, his tension dissolved. It was as if he was sitting in another dimension, where burdens, worries, plans, and expectations faded into the background. What remained was only his breath. What remained was peace. He lost track of time. When the guide softly said, "You may open your eyes whenever you're," James realized he had just experienced something beyond words. It wasn't a loud excitement, nor a fleeting joy. It was a deep stillness, a peace he had never known. He thought, if just sitting here for a few minutes can bring me this feeling, maybe I should try again. In the days that followed, James began setting aside 5 to 10 minutes each morning simply to sit, breathe, and observe. Not every day was easy. Sometimes his thoughts erupted like a storm. Sometimes impatience drove him to stand up. But he had already learned the most important lesson from that day in the park. If he simply sat down, observed, and let go, peace would eventually come. That moment in Hyde Park didn't magically erase all the stress in James's life, but it marked a turning point. And that moment, however brief, can change the way you see your mind and your entire life. 1.2 Story 2. In the heart of Tokyo, a tear falls. Tokyo, on a drizzling summer evening. The city moved to its Shinjuku. Aiko sat slumped at her desk, eyes swollen with tears, her trembling hands gripping the termination letter. She once believed she was on the right path. At 27, Aiko had a job in downsizing. Her name was on the list. No warning, no negotiation, just a cold letter ending her contract. On her way home, every step felt heavy, as if the entire city had turned its back on her. Tears streamed down her face, blending with the drizzle outside her window. In despair, Aiko aimlessly opened her laptop, scrolling without focus. A short video appeared. Try sitting down, breathing, and observing your feelings. You are not your sadness. You are simply experiencing it. The words pierced through her turmoil like a thin thread of light. At first, she laughed bitterly. Outside, heavy, overwhelming, but never eternal. Slowly, the grip of sorrow loosened. The tears were still there, but they no longer drowned her. They were simply passing experiences in the present moment, like storm clouds drifting across Tokyo's sky, destined to disperse, revealing blue once again. Her grief, too, was temporary. The realization made her exhale in relief. Her body softened. Her shoulders stopped trembling. For the first time that day, she breathed deeply. In the stillness, a quiet comfort arose. I haven't lost everything. My job does not define me. This sadness will. For the first time in weeks, she fell into a deep sleep, embraced by the fragile but real belief that even in the storm of emotions, there exists a place of peace within herself. 1.3 Impermanence, non-self, and the moment of liberation from the mind's bondage. In Buddhist teachings, moments of awakening often do not arrive as grand, dramatic events, but appear in the simplest of ways. A single breath fully recognized, an emotion observed without being carried away, or a thought seen clearly in its arising and passing. It is in these very moments that we begin to perceive the three fundamental marks of all phenomena: impermanence, non-self, and the innate freedom of the mind. Impermanence means that everything in life is constantly changing. Nothing lasts forever. Emotions come and go. Thoughts arise and then dissolve. The youthful body eventually grows old. When we fail to see impermanence, we cling tightly to each moment, believing joy will last forever or pain will never fade. But when we truly contemplate impermanence, we realize suffering is only a passing wave, and joy is no more permanent than drifting clouds. With this insight, fear and attachment naturally loosen their grip. Non-self takes the contemplation deeper. Normally, we identify ourselves with whatever we experience. I am this sadness. I am this failure. I am this anger. But Buddhism teaches us that there is no fixed, unchanging self behind all this. What we call I is merely a temporary aggregation of body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. When we see this truth, we understand that we are not locked into any single emotion or thought. We are not anger. We are not despair. We are not fear. These are only phenomena arising and passing away, while awareness itself remains as the deeper ground. By clearly seeing impermanence and non-self, we encounter an essential truth. The mind is innately free. Usually, we believe we are imprisoned by circumstances, by emotions, by the endless stream of thought. But through practice and insight, we realize that thoughts and feelings are like clouds drifting across the sky. The sky is never harmed by the clouds. Likewise, the awakened mind is never damaged by passing disturbances. The moment of awakening, therefore, is the moment we stop identifying with what is happening inside us. We see anger arise, but it is not, I am anger. We feel sorrow, but it is not, I am sorrow. We simply observe, and in that observation, freedom is revealed. This freedom is not about escaping life, nor is it about suppressing emotions. It is the serenity that comes from knowing that emotions, thoughts, and even this body itself are in constant transformation. Within that transformation, awareness, the clear knowing, remains steady like an unshaken foundation. This is the moment of shifted perception. This is the threshold of African-American man in his 30s living in New York City. He worked at a large advertising firm where pressure and a fast-paced lifestyle seemed to be unavoidable. From a young age, Marcus had always been someone who pushed himself to rise above challenges to secure his place in his career. Yet that same constant striving left his mind surrounded by anxiety. Every morning, the moment he opened his eyes, his heart would race, as if the day ahead was yet another battlefield. On the subway ride to work, endless scenarios filled his head. Would his boss be satisfied? Reactions. It was not his whole being. And more importantly, he didn't have to believe in or follow them. That moment was like a ray of light piercing through a dark room. Marcus couldn't say all his anxiety vanished, but he knew he had touched a new truth. The mind could be observed. And once observed, it no longer carried him away completely. After a few months of persistence, meditation became part of Marcus's daily routine. Instead of trying to control his thoughts, he learned to accept them as clouds drifting across the sky. When the sky is full of clouds, his way, Arjun knew well that his anger hurt not only others, but also himself. After each outburst, he felt empty, ashamed, and regretful, yet the cycle continued. To his friends, he was someone outspoken, impulsive, and hard to control. One day, after a fierce argument with his closest friend over something trivial, Arjun returned to his dorm weighed down by regret. Sitting silently, he remembered a piece of advice once given by a university teacher. If you don't control your anger, it will control you. Try observing your breath. Meditation may help you. That night, for the first time, Arjun sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and focused on his breath. At first, his mind raced uncontrollably, replaying the fight. His friend's words echoed in his head. You're always selfish. The words pierced him like knives, burning in his chest. Anger surged again, ready to explode. But this time, instead of jumping up to send a message or call to argue, his anger, dragging in mental retorts he longed to throw back at his friend. His fists clenched tightly. Then, in a fleeting pause between two breaths, Arjun suddenly noticed anger was rising like a wave. It surged up, covered him completely, but just like before, it didn't last forever. He experimented with just sitting there, watching it, as though watching a dark cloud forming in the sky. Time passed slowly. 1 minute, then 2, then 10. The anger didn't vanish instantly, but something began to shift. Instead of being swept away, he simply saw it. He noticed his breath quickening. As anger flared, he noticed his pounding heartbeat. He noticed his trembling hands wanting to strike. But he did nothing, just sat, breathed, and observed. The climax came when his mind replayed an image of his friend sneering and shaking his head in contempt. Rage surged violently, his whole body tightening. He nearly jumped up, but in that very moment, he caught his breath, fast, hot, shallow, being drowned in it. Meditation techniques in Buddhism are ways to return and observe the mind directly. Among them, anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing, is the foundational and widely practiced method. By focusing on the breath, the practitioner creates an anchor for attention. The breath, subtle and natural, becomes the doorway that brings us back to the present. When the mind is disturbed by anger, sadness, or anxiety, simply returning to the breath allows us to realize these emotions are present, but they are not me. Vipassana, or insight meditation, goes further. It does not stop at concentrating on the breath, but expands to observe any mental phenomena that arise. Anger, greed, sorrow, joy, all are noted without judgment. Practitioners learn to see them as clouds drifting across the sky, appearing and disappearing, without belonging to any permanent self. This is a deep recognition of impermanence and non-self in the Dharma. Through such practice, we see that every emotion, no matter how intense, is only temporary. They arise from certain conditions and dissolve when those conditions change. The key is not to chase after them or resist them, but to observe and acknowledge them. This is the doorway to liberation, realizing that we are no longer bound by the stream of consciousness. Observation in meditation is not cold detachment, but complete awareness. It is like a lamp illuminating a dark room. When light appears, darkness cannot dominate. When mindfulness is present, the mind is no longer ruled by ignorance and habit. Of chaos, memories, emotions, and even the shadows of the mind that we have long avoided. These are the inevitable challenges along the path of practice. This section will lead us into stories that reflect the struggles of confronting the mind, showing us that challenges are not obstacles, but the very keys that unlock inner growth. 3.1 Story 5. The Teacher and the Storm Within. Arnaud was a empty the mind, to stop all thoughts from arising. Within minutes, he was seething with frustration. Each time a thought appeared, he hurried to push it away, only to grow more irritated. By the 10th minute, he jumped up, hurled his cushion into the corner, and shouted, "I can't do this." The sense of failure haunted him the entire day. He wondered why others could sit quietly and feel peace, while he found only chaos. A part of him believed he was too weak, incapable of mastering his own mind. That night, staring out the window of his third-floor apartment, watching the yellow glow of street lamps reflected on rain-soaked streets, he felt a wave of loneliness wash over him. Was meditation really meant for him, or just a beautiful illusion? But Arnaud was not one to give up easily. The following morning, he traveled to a meditation center on the outskirts of Paris, where a small group gathered weekly. In the spacious hall, he saw people of all ages quietly sitting, eyes half closed, breathing gently. He followed suit. This time, instead of waging war with his thoughts, he simply sat and let them pass. The stream of memories and worries was still there, but he no longer rushed to fight them. The moment didn't last long, but it was enough to show him something different. He could watch his mind as if it were a river flowing by, without plunging in. The irritation was still present, but he felt, for the first time, that he wasn't entirely consumed by it. He glimpsed a small space between himself and the storm of thoughts. The path remained. He was so restless he wanted to quit. Yet there were also brief, shining moments when he felt his breath clearly, rising, falling, and the mind calmed like a lake after the wind. One autumn afternoon, weeks, Arnaud slept deeply, not because he had mastered his mind, but because he had accepted that he didn't need to control it. And in that acceptance, a new door seemed to open, leading him one step further on his journey of self-discovery. 3.2 Story 6. The Ghosts of the Past in a Moment of Meditation. In the middle of New York, a city that never sleeps, buzzing with endless noise, there are still people who feel lost amid its relentless pace. Jenna, a 26-year-old fashion designer, was one of them. Outwardly, she seemed like a picture of success, young, creative, and with a job many would envy. Yet inside, Jenna carried a nameless unease, as if something heavy pressed on her heart, something she could never quite identify. A close friend suggested that she try meditation to relieve stress. Jenna agreed with a smile, assuming it would be no different from yoga or a spa day. But on her very first session, sitting down quietly, she encountered something she had never expected. In her small Brooklyn apartment, the room was dim except for a faint glow from the window. Jenna sat on the cushion, closed her eyes, and listened to her breath. Instead of calm, however, a strange feeling arose, fear. Her heart pounded, her palms grew cold. Behind her closed eyelids, she felt as though she was falling into a vast, empty void. The more she tried to steady herself, the stronger the fear became. Suddenly, vivid memories from childhood surfaced, her parents' bitter arguments, nights she cried alone in a dark room, the piercing loneliness of feeling abandoned. These memories, long buried, surged back like a flood. Jenna burst into tears, her eyes flying open, gasping for air as though she were drowning. In the following days, Jenna wrestled with whether to give up or continue. Part of her dreaded sitting still, terrified that the ghosts of memory would return. But another part, strangely, sensed that this might be exactly what she needed to face. After much hesitation, she returned to the cushion. This time, when fear appeared, she didn't run. Her heart still raced, her tears still flowed, but Jenna chose to stay. In her trembling, she began to realize this fear could not kill her. It was simply the repressed emotions of the past, finally surfacing. They hurt, but they also revealed truths she had long avoided. One evening, while meditating, Jenna again saw the image of her younger self, curled up in the corner of a room. But instead of panicking, she inhaled deeply, imagining herself kneeling beside that little girl, holding her close and whispering, "It's okay. You're not alone anymore." For the first time, the painful memory was not just a source of fear, but a doorway to healing. Weeks of patience brought change. The fear still arose at times, but no longer with the same force. She had learned to sit with it, to watch without resistance. The emotions that once suffocated her now drifted through her like passing clouds. One night, outside the window, the city lights still blazed, car horns echoing in the distance. Jenna opened her eyes after a long meditation, her breath slow and steady. She knew the journey ahead would still be full of trials, but a profound shift had begun. Instead of fleeing from fear, she had learned to step into it, touch it, and from there, discover a quiet peace, right in the heart of a city that never sleeps. 3.3 When difficulties become the gateway to the truth of the mind. On the path of meditation, everyone will inevitably encounter challenges. Some feel physical pain, others face fear, and some experience frustration, boredom, or the sense that nothing is happening. We want to escape. When bored, we want stimulation. Yet this very resistance is what binds us more tightly than the suffering itself. Resistance makes pain feel longer, fear feel more intense, and boredom turn into despair. Through meditation, we may notice that suffering comes and goes, but it is resistance that drains us. Physical pain may eventually ease, strong emotions may fade. Challenges in meditation, it is not a sign of failure. On the contrary, it is proof that they are truly entering the depths of the inner world. For it is often in the hardest moments that, with patience and mindfulness, we can discover the light of liberation. Part 4. Touching emotions, opening the door to liberation. Emotions are among the deepest and most subtle layers of the mind. Often, we are carried away by them without even realizing it. Anger makes us erupt, sorrow leaves us broken, and anxiety traps us in an invisible cage. Meditation does not teach us to suppress or eliminate emotions, but to recognize and observe them as they are. In this section, we will step into stories where people confront the inner storms of their hearts, and in doing so, discover a pathway toward inner freedom. 4.1 Story 7. When anger suddenly rose on the streets of Melbourne. It was a summer afternoon in Melbourne. The city was vibrant, golden sunlight pouring over the crowded streets, cars lined up bumper to bumper. Ethan, a young Australian man of 25, had just finished his shift at an interior design office. All he could think about was getting home. Quickly, putting on some soft music, lying on the sofa, and leaving behind the stress of a long day. He didn't dislike the city. Melbourne, to him, was both familiar and liberating. But rush hour was a different story. Blaring horns, impatient crowds, frowns and scowls everywhere. Ethan pressed the gas gently, keeping distance from the car ahead, silently hoping that today he could be a little more patient than usual. Yet the very moment he thought of patience, a car behind him honked violently, swerved ahead, and cut into his lane, forcing him to brake suddenly. The reckless car disappeared into the traffic, but what it left behind inside Ethan was a storm. In that instant, anger surged like wildfire. His face burned hot, his hands clenched the steering wheel, his heartbeat thundered in his chest. A voice screamed inside. That idiot! How dare he do that? Every cell in his body urged him. Step on the gas, chase him down, shout back. Prove he wasn't weak. Ethan had always known his temper was short, but he had never seen anger erupt so quickly, so violently. Just seconds earlier, he had been calmly picturing a quiet evening at home. Now, one careless act from a stranger had dragged him into a whirlpool of rage. He trembled, breathing fast, his whole body taut like a bowstring. Amid the thick city traffic, he realized he was on the verge of losing control. Anger was nothing less than a fire-consuming reason, pushing him to the edge of reckless action. And then, a memory flickered. Months ago, in a casual chat with his old friend Liam, Ethan had complained about his temper. Liam had smiled and said, "Just breathe. Every time you're angry, just breathe. Don't do anything, just breathe." Enough to swallow him whole. Instead, Ethan began to notice himself, the trembling hands, the shallow breath, the thoughts shouting, "Fight back. Prove yourself." Arising, fading, arising again. The reckless car was long gone, but Ethan stayed parked. What startled him wasn't the stranger's dangerous move, it was his own reaction. Just a few breaths, and he had stepped back from the brink of. His mind overflowed. Flashes of the car cutting him off, the surge of heat, memories of every argument since childhood. But instead of drowning in them, he focused on breathing. Inhale, exhale. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Restlessness began to ease. He no longer felt dragged away by each thought. It was like sitting on a riverbank, watching boats drift past. Some boats carried anger, some regret, some full of unspoken curses. Yet all floated by silently. When he opened his eyes, it was nearly midnight. A smile spread across his face, a light, liberating smile he couldn't remember having in years. Not because he had erased anger, but because he realized anger wasn't the almighty force he once believed it to be. It came, lingered, and passed, like storm clouds blown away by the wind. The next morning, Ethan began the day with 10 minutes of meditation. And he continued, every day. It wasn't always easy. Some days his mind was restless, filled with irritation. Some days old arguments replayed and made him clench his fists. But each time, he returned to the breath. Weeks later, he noticed the change. Work conflicts didn't push him over the edge anymore. Ethan learned to observe and release. Not that he became instantly gentle, but he had discovered a new kind of strength, the strength to stop, to breathe, to taste the freedom of an unbound heart. 4.2 Story 8. When the past refuses to sleep in Berlin. On a late autumn afternoon, Berlin wore the yellow cloak of falling leaves. Along a cobblestone street near the Spree River, Marianne, a woman in her 30s, walked slowly, her heart heavy. The city was still bustling, trams ringing, cafes glowing with warm lights. Yet her mind was drowning in another world, a world of. Everything collapsed. Stefan left without a real explanation, chasing a career abroad. Marianne was left with nothing but emptiness, where memories and tears intertwined. She tried to move on. It was about her own attachment. She couldn't let go. She still kept their old photos, still checked Stefan's social media, watching him smile beside another woman. One cold winter evening. Do not push thoughts away. Just see them pass, like clouds across the sky. Marianne sat upright, eyes half closed. At first, her mind was chaotic. Stefan's image appeared vividly, as if he were sitting before her. She saw her younger self clinging to him under the pouring rain. She heard his laughter, the way he whispered her name. Longing and resentment surged like endless waves. Her chest tightened, tears rolled down. She wanted to stand up, to run, to scream for the pain to end. But in that moment, the teacher's words echoed. Just observe. Do not resist. Do not run away. But from her own attachment, she had rebuilt the past, embraced it, and given it the power to torment her night after night. Tears streamed down, but this time they felt lighter. She breathed again. Each inhale carried the pain upward. Each exhale released a fragment of it. She didn't force Stefan's image away, but she no longer chased it either. She simply watched, as if an old film was. She felt a true silence. Not a sudden forgetting, but the realization, all of this was only memory, only shadow. The pain was no longer a bleeding wound, but a piece of the past she could look at, smile, and set down. In the following days, Marianne continued meditating each night. Sometimes the past returned, fierce and swirling. But each time, she reminded herself, observe. Do not cling. Gradually, the power of those memories weakened. She began to notice the present more clearly. The morning sunlight through her window, the taste of hot coffee, the laughter of her colleagues. Small, vivid things she had overlooked for so long while chasing the past. One afternoon, passing by an old cafe where she and Stefan once sat, Marianne paused. The familiar song played. Her heart quivered, but it no longer stabbed. She smiled, walked on, and felt the wind blowing through her hair. For the first time, she knew she had truly walked through the storm. Marianne did not forget Stefan, but she was no longer bound by his shadow. She had found her way back to herself, the way of letting go of attachment and touching freedom within her own heart. 4. Yet it dissolves when the conditions no longer sustain it. Every emotion is like a wave upon the ocean's surface. No wave lasts forever, and the water itself has never lost its still, clear nature beneath the movement. When we fail to see this impermanent nature, we fall into identifying with emotions. When anger arises, we think, I am angry. When sorrow appears, phenomena arise and pass away. When an emotion such as anger or fear arises, instead of reacting out of habit, one simply sees it, like watching a cloud drift across the sky. Anger comes, anger goes. Sadness comes, sadness goes. There is no I in it, only passing currents of the mind. Here we see clearly the teaching of anatta, non-self. Emotions are not a permanent self. They do not belong to us, nor do they define who we are. If we stop identifying with them, then anger is just anger, sorrow is just sorrow, phenomena that arise and vanish. When seen this way, attachment loosens. Instead of being swept away, we remain steady in inner stillness. Vipassana teaches that all suffering originates from clinging to what is impermanent. This practice offers us the chance to face the flowing river of the mind, gradually untying the chains. When a practitioner can smile even in the presence of anger, grief, or fear, it is a sign of liberation, not by erasing emotions, but by no longer being bound by them. Thus, the moment of realizing the impermanence and non-self of emotions is not merely a meditative experience, but a gateway to deep freedom. It shifts us from painful identification to a spacious awareness, where every emotion is seen for what it is, fleeting, unreal, and belonging to no one. And in that very seeing, there is tranquility. Emotions, but about returning to and recognizing that very foundation, the true nature of the mind. In this section, we will step into stories where people confront their own minds, and in doing so, glimpse the doorway that leads to serenity. 5.1 Story 9, by the misty lake in Canada. Lake Ontario still slumbered beneath a fragile veil of morning mist. Birds sang from the trees along the shore, their calls blending with the soft whisper of the wind over the water. Andrew, a Canadian man in his 30s, sat on an old wooden chair he had carried out from his family's small cabin. Many nights he lay awake, unable to sleep, tormented by the noise inside his own mind. One day, while traveling with friends, Andrew overheard someone mention meditation as a way to find peace. That report, I wonder how my boss will react. Am I even on the right path in my career? One after another, the questions swirled in his head like a ceaseless debate. Frustration rose within. Waves rise, then fade. The mind is the same. A memory surfaces, a worry emerges, and then all dissolves back into stillness. He stopped fighting. He simply watched. When the thought, I am worthless, he sat still, body trembling slightly. The phrase seemed simple, yet in that moment it revealed an entirely new horizon. All his life, he had identified himself with thoughts, feeling happy when they were pleasant, miserable when they were painful, worthless when they were self-critical. But now he saw them for what they were, fleeting waves on the surface of the mind. His true nature was the still, deep water beneath. Tears welled up, not from sorrow but from an immense relief. For the first time, Andrew felt the gap between the observing mind and the stream of thoughts. And in that space, he discovered freedom from the endless turbulence of his inner world. By now, the sun had risen higher, casting golden light across the lake. Andrew opened his eyes and inhaled deeply. Everything remained the same. Work, responsibilities, life itself. But within him something had profoundly shifted. He was no longer a prisoner of his thoughts. He had found a sanctuary of, reminding himself, I am not my thoughts. And by the misty Canadian lake, in the quiet of dawn, Andrew rediscovered a part of himself long forgotten. The unchanging, free, and luminous nature of the. In her early 30s, was accustomed to the city's relentless pace. Her work revolved around breaking news, political scandals, and sensational stories that her newsroom demanded be exploited to. Fearless reporter who always kept things under control. But inside, she was like a volcano under pressure, tense, exhausted, and often overwhelmed. On long nights alone in her small apartment, Aya returned to the newsroom drained. Criticism, arguments, and even suspicion from colleagues left her nearly broken. Amid the turmoil, she remembered an old friend, now a meditation practitioner. Like needles, making her body tense. Instead of fleeing, this time Aya tried to simply observe, just as her friend had advised. She let her mind become the audience in a theater, while emotions and thoughts played across the screen. Sadness appeared, then faded. Anxiety flared, then vanished. Even self-blame, which usually crushed her, now only passed by like a fleeting wave. Suddenly, like the rain outside, heavy, noisy, but eventually clearing, leaving the air fresher. The next day at the newsroom, Aya again faced skeptical looks and harsh questions. But this time, instead of being swept away, she quietly observed her inner reactions. A flicker of anger, then gone. A moment of wounded pride, then gone. She still worked, still answered, but no longer felt home. One evening, after submitting her article, Aya once more sat on the floor of her living room, eyes closed, following her breath. Her mind was calmer than ever. Not because emotions had arise, non-self, anatta, and bare attention. These are not merely philosophical theories, but practical foundations for living more freely and with less suffering in everyday life. Non-self means that there is no fixed, unchanging self within us. The body changes, emotions shift, and thoughts arise and pass away without pause. When we mistakenly believe, I am this emotion, or I am this thought, we hand over all our power to things that are inherently impermanent. But once we recognize that they are merely mental phenomena, appearing and disappearing, we are no longer bound by them. Observation in meditation is the ability to look directly into the flow of the mind without judgment, without labeling, without resistance, and without escape. It is the capacity to is the same. When we sustain this observing attitude, we begin to see the true nature of the mind. The mind is not just scattered thoughts or turbulent emotions. It also holds the capacity for. Applied to daily life, this insight is deeply practical. When anger arises, we recognize it is not me, but just a wave that will pass. When anxiety surfaces, we know it too will fade. When joy appears, we fully embrace it, but without clinging. Through this, we become freer amidst life's changes. In work, this mindfulness helps us respond wisely instead of reacting out of habit. From living, it is the art of living mindfully within life itself. By practicing non-self and nurturing awareness, each of us can discover a peace that does not depend on external conditions and walk more lightly on the journey of existence. Part 6. When meditation becomes a part of everyday life. Meditation does not only take place on the cushion, in retreats, or within silent spaces. It can be present in the rhythm of daily breathing, within the rush of work, or even in the simple act of drinking a cup of tea. When we know how to pause, observe, and live fully in the present moment, meditation naturally becomes a part of life itself. In this section, we will listen to stories that reveal the power of meditation when it is woven into every breath, every step. Puddles on the sidewalks. Min, a young IT staffer working for a large tech corporation, hurried out of the MRT station, clutching his laptop while his eyes remained fixed on his phone, which was buzzing nonstop with work notifications. He knew the meeting that morning would be intense. Management had demanded his team present solutions for the system outage that had triggered of keyboards, ringing phones, and tense faces. The air itself seemed thick with pressure. Min dropped his backpack onto his chair, powered on his laptop, and was immediately greeted by two urgent. Whole team. A stream of anxious thoughts began running through his mind. What if I can't answer their questions? What if the boss loses his temper? What if I let the team down? At that moment, at first, he had brushed it off as an idealistic notion, unrealistic in the busyness of office life. But today, in the rising tension, he felt he needed something different. He stood up and walked out to the small balcony where a few potted plants had been placed for staff breaks. The moist air, still cool from the night's rain, brushed his face and carried with it the raw scent of leaves. He glanced at his watch. 10 minutes left before the meeting. Min sat down on a bench, set aside his phone, and closed his eyes. He turned his attention to the breath. Inhaling, he felt the cool air moving through his nose, filling his chest. Exhaling, he noticed the gentle warmth leaving his body. At first, his mind remained noisy, full of thoughts about the meeting, the questions. Then, too, his heartbeat began to slow. He noticed the tension in his shoulders easing, his posture softening. The office noise still echoed faintly through the glass door, but it now seemed far away, just as this one would. The worry he carried now was nothing more than a ripple on the surface of his mind's lake. When his phone vibrated to remind him of the meeting, Min opened his eyes. 5 short minutes had passed, yet he felt as though he had traveled a long road. His mind was calm, his breath even, his awareness clear. He stood up, picked up his laptop, and walked into the conference room. Inside, his colleagues were already seated, their faces tight with tension, some whispering about the presentation script. The director entered, voice stern, and asked the team to. His breath would turn shallow, and his words might stumble. But this time, he sat upright, inhaled deeply, and answered. His voice wasn't loud or fast, but it was steady and clear. He calmly. This immediately. The atmosphere shifted, easing like a storm cloud lifting. Min's teammates looked at him with gratitude. A wave of pressure had just passed, and he felt as though he had steered a small boat safely through rapids. Leaving the meeting room, Min didn't feel triumphant or victorious. Instead, he simply recognized something simple yet profound. Thanks to those 5 minutes of quiet beforehand, he had been fully present in that critical moment, and that presence had changed everything. That afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the tall windows onto his desk, Min smiled. He reopened the little book he once read and scribbled a line into his notebook. Just 5 minutes, but enough to turn a stressful day into a peaceful one. 6.2 Story 12. When a Child's Cry became a lesson for the mind. It was a cold winter evening in New York. In a small apartment on the 15th floor of an old building in Brooklyn, the dim yellow light fell across the tired face of Sarah. Why won't he stop? I'm too tired. I can't take this anymore. These thoughts crashed over her, as if her mind was about to break apart. Then, almost by chance, Sarah remembered something from the previous weekend, when she had attended a short meditation class for parents. The teacher had said, when your baby cries, before reacting, just breathe. Breathe first, then act. Your child may be. Breathe out, she whispered. The wails filled her ears, but instead of resisting, she tried to observe them. Like the sound of city traffic or the winter wind, she began to see the crying not as an enemy, but as part of the present moment. The first 5 minutes felt unbearable. Anger, helplessness, and even shame that she was a bad mother kept rising up. Yet she continued breathing. Within minutes, he began to hiccup softly, then drifted into sleep. Sarah sat still, cradling him, her own heart quiet at last. The yellow light still glowed, the winter wind still howled outside. But something inside her had shifted. She realized her baby's cry was not only a challenge, it was a mirror for her mind. It was her resistance, her tension, that made everything heavier. Notebook. Every cry is also a bell. Not just a call that my child needs me, but a reminder that I need to return to my breath, to myself. And in that moment, in the middle of a restless city, that is merely a starting point, a door to help the practitioner become familiar with stillness and the ability to observe the mind. But if one stops there, meditation can easily become a separate activity from life, rather than the breath of life itself. In essence, meditation is mindfulness. Mindfulness does not depend on space or circumstance. It can appear while drinking a cup of tea, washing dishes, driving, or holding a crying child. The key is not what we are doing, but whether we are truly present with it. When sitting on a cushion, we focus on the breath to notice the discourse on the foundations of mindfulness. The Buddha taught that mindfulness can be placed on any object, body, feelings, mind, and phenomena. This means that anything that happens in daily life can become the object of practice. When walking, we know we are walking. When eating, we know we are eating. When angry, we know we are angry. And it is this knowing, rather than forcing change. Meditation is not about doing something, but about being present with everything. When meditation becomes continuous presence, life itself is no longer divided into two parts, the time spent meditating and the time spent living normally. At that point, ordinary life itself becomes the path, becomes meditation. Part 7. Connecting with others and the universe. In life, meditation is not ourselves, other people, and the vast universe. The stories in this section will guide you through moments where meditation helps individuals understand, empathize, and harmonize with life in deep, but most importantly, an empty mind ready to observe. This was his first time staying alone in the forest, following the advice of the senior teacher. Sit in the forest, merge with every breath of the trees, the birds, and your own being. Tenzin walked slowly along a narrow path, feeling the cold, damp earth beneath his feet. The surrounding space was quiet, punctuated only by distant bird sky. After a few minutes, he started to notice the surrounding sounds, the gentle rustle of falling leaves, the hum of insects, the seasonal calls of birds. Tenzin realized that all these sounds him shiver slightly. Tenzin opened his eyes and looked at the swaying leaves, sunlight dancing on the trunks, and felt something beyond the distinction of self and other. He sensed he was no longer an isolated being, but part of the vibrant flow of the forest, trees, leaves, birds, wind, all in harmony with his heartbeat. Time lost its meaning. Tenzin forgot about hours, forgot about. His mind expanded, the sense of a separate I gradually dissolved. As the sun rose higher, Tenzin stood and felt every step on the ground, every gentle breeze against his hair. He was no longer an invisible connection to all living beings. He realized that meditation is not only about sitting still, but about opening the heart to experience life, seeing oneself as inseparable from the living universe. That evening, when Tenzin wrote in his journal, he noted, "Today, I realized that nothing is separate from me. Every being, every sound, every breath teaches me about connection, love, and stillness. By merging with all, I find true freedom." And in that moment, deep in the ancient forests of Nepal, a young monk understood that connection with all life is not a theory or distant philosophy, but a vivid, real experience that can be touched anytime the mind is truly calm. 7.2 Story 14. When conflict becomes a door to compassion. In the city of Florence, Italy, he closed his eyes and focused on his breathing, noticing each sensation and thought arising in his mind. All the tension, frustration, and blame became clearer, but instead of resisting, Luca stood, feeling the weight lift from his shoulders. He walked back to the dorm, lighter in step and calmer in mind. Inside, he sensed a connection with those around him, not through compromise or avoidance, but through deep understanding and empathy, recognizing that everyone struggles with themselves in their own way. Back in his room, Luca opened his notebook and wrote in trembling yet. "Right here, amid arguments and tension, I found a deep connection with others and with myself." In that quiet moment, amidst the Florence sunset and the gentle flow of the river, a young student. Heart. 7.3 Interdependence and Compassion. In Buddhism, the concept of interdependence is fundamental to understanding the existence of all phenomena. Nothing exists independently or in isolation. Every object, event, and emotion arises based on complex and continuous relationships with other factors. When we observe the world around us and our own mind, the awareness of interdependence allows us to see that nothing exists in isolation but is always interconnected, interacting continuously like a living network. Through meditation, when the mind is calm and focused, we can perceive this delicate connection more clearly. Moments of anger, sadness, or happiness do not simply arise within ourselves. They are the result of countless causes and conditions interacting in the continuous flow of life. This awareness brings a profound sense of freedom. We are no longer blindly controlled by emotions, but can observe, recognize, and accept them as part of the natural flow. Understanding interdependence opens the door to compassion. Realizing that other people, circumstances, and all things around us are part of an interconnected whole, we naturally develop empathy and love. Conflict is no longer seen as a threat, but becomes an opportunity to cultivate compassion. Every argument, difficulty, and pain becomes a mirror reflecting our mind and a chance to practice. And suffering without judgment. Meditation is a special tool that helps clarify this interdependence. When the mind is still and aware, every thought, emotion, and action becomes more transparent. Words, actions, and thoughts, and respond with compassion rather than emotional reflex. By cultivating stillness, we gradually remove impulsive reactions and instead act with awareness and kindness. Rather than judging or trying to control everything, meditation helps us accept the natural flow of life, understanding that everything arises and passes according to the rhythm of existence, is temporary, formed by countless causes and conditions. Understanding this reduces attachment, anger, greed, and fear. The mind becomes freer, and compassion is no longer limited by selfishness or fear. Every moment of meditation, every life experience becomes a means to recognize this connection, cultivating inner calm, love, and a correct understanding of the nature of all things. Through meditation and awareness of interdependence, people learn to integrate with life in a deeper way, no longer separating oneself from the world, from I and others. Every action is performed with mindfulness and compassion. Every word, every deed, every thought becomes an opportunity to practice love and understanding, creating a positive ripple effect for oneself and others. Meditation is not only mental training, but also a path to perceive the connection with all living beings, with the environment, and with the entire vibrant universe, allowing people to live them. This is the essence of meditation and awareness, where inner stillness merges with understanding, love, and complete connection with all things in the universe. Understanding interdependence. Meditation and life experience reminds us that everything is interconnected and inseparable, and from this awareness, compassion naturally arises, guiding us to a fulfilling, profound anxiety or emotions, but also the hidden layers within oneself. These challenges often appear as fears, buried memories, or latent insecurities, compelling the meditator to confront and observe. A software engineer seemed to live an ordinary life, with a steady job, friendly colleagues, and familiar routines. Yet inside, he constantly felt a deep emptiness, a subtle loneliness that words could not capture. Projects, work achievements, and casual conversations all seemed unable to fill the void within him. One late afternoon, as snow lightly fell on rooftops and the thin ice on the herbal tea filling the air, he sat on a simple cushion in the middle of the room, closed his eyes, and began observing his breath. At first, his thoughts were noisy, running from work projects. It didn't emerge violently but crept in like cold water, seeping into every corner of his soul. Eric tried to resist, but the harder he resisted, the tighter the loneliness clung. In that moment, he realized loneliness was not an enemy, nor was it something negative. It was a part of his reality, a reflection of clinging, unfulfilled expectations, and notions of self he had been holding onto. The breath became a guiding anchor. He began observing the feeling of loneliness rather than fleeing from it, allowing it to exist in awareness without judgment or resistance. Each inhalation and exhalation created space between himself and the emotion, and gradually he realized that this loneliness, like all sensations, was impermanent, passing along with the flow of was the witness, a calm observer amidst the sea of emotions. At the climax of the experience, Eric felt a sense of lightness and freedom he had never known. Loneliness, instead of being a burden, and clouds, never fixed. Every breath, every moment of meditation became a bridge to inner stillness, where all emotions had their place but did not bind or control the mind. After more than an hour of meditation, Eric opened his eyes and looked out the window. Snow still fell lightly, the sky remained gray, but inside, he felt an unusual serenity. He realized that facing loneliness was not naturally calm, and loneliness is not an enemy, but an opportunity to recognize the mind's true nature. Ultimately, Eric understood that deep meditation was not merely about confronting loneliness or a chaotic mix of thoughts, emotions, and labels beyond his control. One day, as part of a mindfulness course he had enrolled in, Liam was guided to try a long meditation, focusing on his breath and who he was and what he was doing. Gradually, as he observed, Liam noticed something unusual. These thoughts arose and then faded, unable to truly control him. He tried not to cling to any thought or the self seemed to vanish, no longer bound by thoughts, emotions, or identity. Anxiety, fear, and self-doubt arose and passed, leaving him as the observer, witnessing the mind's flow without attachment. Boundaries between himself and the surrounding environment gradually blurred. He no longer felt separated but integrated into the rhythm of life, space, and each breath. Stream of mind. There was no space for clinging, fear, or the pain of ego. A profound sense of freedom spread throughout his body, from head to toe, as if his entire being had merged into infinite. Fixed, not him, as he had clung to, but only a temporary phenomenon of the mind's flow. This experience of the dissolution of the self brought freedom, peace, and the ability to live fully in the and recognize the passing of feelings. Every action, thought, and relationship became lighter and more natural. He understood that deep awareness of the mind's nature occurs not only in long leaps, but moments when consciousness becomes clearer, as the mind is observed without being controlled by attachment, emotions, or thoughts. This is a continuous process where each meditation, thoughts, emotions, memories, bodily sensations, all are phenomena emerging in the stream of consciousness. By observing without clinging, one realizes that the ego, as previously believed, this is a small awakening, realizing that the self is not the active controller, but the mind is a continuous process, a flowing stream where all phenomena are impermanent and lack any fixed substance. This process does not occur once, but is an ongoing journey. Each meditation session, each moment of observing the mind, even for a few minutes, is a step forward in awareness. Small awakenings gradually accumulate, like water slowly smoothing stone. Each experience, however small, helps the mind become freer, clearer, and less dominated by meaningless attachments. Penetrates actions, thoughts, and emotions. In deeper experiences, awareness of non-self often comes with a gentle but lasting sense of liberation. When one no longer clings to the self, emotions, whether joy, sadness, or anger, are recognized as temporary phenomena that do not define the true essence of the person. It is important to understand that awakening is not about perfection. When a person can let go of attachment and observe the mind without reacting, they realize that the mind is inherently free, clear, and full of potential. These small moments of awakening are like a single deep meditation session does not always last hours or provide a major awakening, but through repeated practice, awareness of non-self gradually permeates behavior, decisions, and daily reactions. The meditator realizes that even in simple actions like walking, eating, or conversing, they can observe the mind, recognize attachments, and maintain inner calm. And non-judgmental observation allows the expansion of kindness, understanding, and tolerance. In conclusion, analyzing the process of deep meditation and the experience of non-self shows that awakening is a continuous journey, not a fixed destination. Transformations in awareness occur through small awakenings, when one observes the mind, recognizes impermanence and non-self, and learns to live freely in the present. Each meditation experience, short or long, is a building block for deeper understanding of the mind's nature, enabling individuals to live fully, freely, and unlock their inherent potential. The continuous, patient practice of observation is the core of inner transformation, the essence of meditation, and true awakening. Part 9. Transforming oneself. Through each meditation session and each moment of observation, a person learns to adjust their reactions, understand emotions clearly, and apply inner wisdom to relationships, work. How meditation helped transform reactions to conflict. In the heart of Boston, David, an American banker, was known for his quick temper and immediate reactions to stressful situations at work. Whenever conflicts arose with colleagues, David would often respond impulsively, sometimes with sharp words, sometimes with visible frustration, creating tension in the office and distancing himself from coworkers. Although he realized this behavior negatively impacted both his career and personal life, change seemed like an impossible challenge. One day, after a long and exhausting workday, focusing on his breath and observing each rising emotion without judgment or reaction. During the first week, David struggled as his mind constantly wandered and workplace stress resurfaced. With his manager and colleagues, a small conflict arose. A coworker unintentionally criticized one of his proposals. In the past, David would have reacted immediately, but this time, the result surprised him. His calm response not only diffused tension but also impressed his colleagues and manager, earning their respect. David clearly felt that observing emotions without being, took a deep breath, and observed his mind. He realized that the irritation was only a temporary phenomenon and did not define him. By remaining calm, he could respond politely and empathetically. Daily mindset and lifestyle. He noticed that meditation and observing his mind reduced stress, improved sleep, and enhanced interactions with others. Automatic, reactive behaviors were replaced by observation and meditation. Small moments each day, breathing, observing the mind, not reacting impulsively to conflict, gradually transformed him into a more patient, calm, and composed person. He understood that the ability to observe without being dominated by emotions brought true inner freedom, forming the foundation to apply meditation in every aspect of life, from work and family to social relationships. David's story illustrates that meditation is not only a method for calming the mind, but also a tool for real personal transformation. By learning to observe thoughts and emotions without immediate reactions, individuals gradually become more deliberate in action, patient in communication, and composed in the face of challenges. This is the power of applying. Present. In Sydney, Australia, Emily, a young woman working in marketing, was always busy with a packed schedule, projects, and career goals. She used to believe that happiness depended on success. Quietly, focused on her breath, and observed the flow of thoughts without judgment. At first, her mind constantly wandered, and worries and restlessness kept arising. Gradually, through deep breaths, she began to notice that these thoughts were temporary. They came and went, could not control her, and did not define her self-worth. During the first week, Emily experienced a moment of change while meditating in a coastal park. The cool sea breeze blew, waves gently lapped, and she focused on each breath, feeling an unusual inner calm. A memory of a past failure at work surfaced, unable to disturb her core. On another afternoon, while preparing an important presentation, an unexpected issue arose. Her computer froze and critical files wouldn't open. Previously, Emily would have panicked, stressed, and struggled to deliver her presentation. But now, by focusing on her breath and observing her mind, she recognized that the situation was only temporary. She inhaled deeply, remained calm, and found alternative ways to proceed. The presentation went smoothly, and she experienced a profound joy that came not from the outcome, but from her ability to stay calm and fully present. Emily began applying meditation and mindfulness to even the smallest details of daily life, noticing the taste of her morning coffee, the rhythm of her steps walking to external circumstances, but from how she experiences and perceives each moment. One day, Emily met an old friend she hadn't seen in a long time. Instead of comparing herself to her friends' achievements, she observed the arising emotions, breathed deeply, and felt pure joy in the moment of reunion. Emily realized that happiness is inherently present, not something to be sought, and not dependent on success, status, or recognition from others. Over the months of meditation practice, Emily noticed reduced stress, emotions no longer controlling her decisions and actions, reality present in every moment. One quiet afternoon by the beach at sunset, Emily sat meditating, feeling the sand under her feet, hearing the waves, and sensing the wind on her skin. She smiled, realizing that meditation had taught her an essential lesson. Happiness does not depend on external conditions, but comes from the ability to live mindfully, observe, and embrace each present moment. These experiences transformed not only her emotions, but also her outlook on life, relationships, and herself, bringing inner freedom and genuine joy. Emily recognized that each moment of meditation, modern life, meditation in the context of modern life, is not just a method for calming the mind or improving focus. It is a powerful tool that transforms the way people experience, react, social interactions, and inner emotions, ultimately opening the door to experiencing genuine happiness. First, meditation helps individuals recognize and observe the arising thoughts and emotions, without being carried away by them. In today's fast-paced life, people are often dominated by work pressures, family responsibilities, social expectations, and comparisons with others. These factors trigger automatic reactions, anxiety, anger, restlessness, or sadness. During meditation, we learn to observe these reactions as temporary phenomena, not the true essence of ourselves. This awareness, called mindfulness, sati, allows the mind to remain unbound by emotions, reducing impulsive actions or speech while enhancing the ability to respond wisely. Next, meditation develops the awareness of impermanence and non-self in daily experiences. Emotions, thoughts, and situations all arise and pass, like clouds drifting across the sky. When one realizes that they are not identical with these thoughts or emotions, they are no longer trapped by them. This reduces stress, internal conflict, and dependency on external circumstances for happiness. Instead of chasing success, status, or social standards, meditation practitioners learn to find joy in the present experience, through each breath, in each moment of inner awareness. Moreover, meditation directly influences behavior and reactions in social relationships. When the mind is calm, the ability to recognize and understand both one's own and others' emotions increases. This leads to greater patience, empathy, and compassion in interactions. As illustrated in previous stories, meditators learn to handle conflicts without reacting impulsively, observe emotions without being controlled, does not depend on external circumstances, but arises from present moment awareness and acceptance. By living mindfully, observing without attachment to desires, anger, or fear, practitioners experience intrinsic joy, a state of inner peace not reliant on external factors. Happiness becomes a life skill, an inner psychological state rather than a condition dependent on the outside world. Experiences like walking, drinking tea, or listening to music. This freedom brings serenity and a sense of control over life without dependence on external factors. In modern practice, thereby improving mental health, enhancing focus, and maintaining inner peace. Overall, meditation brings profound transformation from understanding the impermanent and non-self nature of internal. Become calmer, more patient, and compassionate, while cultivating inner happiness, freedom, and peace, regardless of external circumstances. The stories of David and Emily illustrate the practical. Only a method to train the mind, but a path to comprehensively transform how we live, react, and perceive happiness. When practiced correctly, it provides long-term benefits, reshapes psychology, enhances awareness, and helps individuals fully live in the present, integrating Buddhist wisdom into modern life, laying a strong foundation for lasting inner peace and happiness. Part 10. Meditation, observing emotions, recognizing the true nature of the mind, to applying meditation in daily life and connecting with others and the universe. Through each story, it becomes clear that meditation is not merely a technique, but a holistic path that transforms how we perceive ourselves, react to emotions, and fully live in each present moment. Meditation helps us recognize. Meditation can transform both mental and physical life. We also see that challenges are an essential part of meditation. When the mind is restless, negative emotions arise, or past memories surface. Sometimes we must face fear, loneliness, or disappointment. But by observing and accepting without reacting impulsively, the mind gradually becomes peaceful, patient, and deeply self-aware. Taking a mindful breath before responding to a tense email, observing emotions during conversations, or simply noticing your breath while moving between tasks. Each ordinary moment becomes an opportunity to practice mindfulness, observe, and apply Buddhist principles in practical life, improving mental health, focus, and inner peace. Moreover, meditation fosters connection with others and the universe. Recognizing that all things are interconnected, every living being affects and is affected, we cultivate compassion, respect, and deep love. Every conflict and relationship becomes an opportunity to practice patience and understanding, creating a harmonious, balanced, and meaningful life. Looking back at the entire journey, it is evident that meditation is not a one-time miracle. Try dedicating a few minutes each day to observe your breath, listen to your mind, and practice meditation. These small moments are the first steps toward a greater journey, a journey of deeper awareness, inner happiness, and freedom. If you find the stories and insights in this video helpful, don't forget to like to support the channel, share with friends and loved ones to spread the values of meditation and self-awareness, and subscribe so you don't miss future videos on the inner journey, meditation, and Buddhist teachings. Each interaction helps us continue sharing meaningful. Have you ever felt your mind like a chaotic river, where thoughts, emotions, and worries constantly swirl out of control? You try to push them away, but they keep coming back, stronger, racing, and a sense of being lost in your own life. It is in these moments that many of us begin to ask, is there a way to truly see my mind, to understand who I really am? Imagine a silent space, where you are no longer disturbed by the sound of phones, messages, or the pressures of the outside world. In that silence, you begin to hear things you've never listened to before. Thoughts running wild, emotions rising that you have long tried to suppress, and even fears, regrets, joys, or hidden hopes. You realize that you have been living mostly on autopilot, following habits and reactions, never truly observing your own mind with honesty. There is a story I want to share with you, the story of someone like you, like me, who once thought meditation was a luxury, something meant for people detached from reality. But one day, they decided to sit quietly, even just for a few minutes, and from that moment, everything began to change. They realized that thoughts are not themselves, emotions do not define them, and that there is a part of the mind that is always peaceful and observant, no matter how chaotic the outside world is. Along this journey, there are truly shocking moments, those seconds when everything suddenly becomes clear, when you realize that all pain, anger, disappointment, and worry are just passing waves, and you do not need. You will see yourself in moments of worry, in failures, and in fleeting moments of small but transformative insight. And now, I invite you to embark on this journey with me. A journey that does not. Stories about meditation and self-awareness, where each story is a door leading you closer to understanding your mind and your true self. Are you ready? A collection of inspiring stories about meditation and self-awareness. In modern life, our minds are rarely still. They are like a rushing river, where thoughts, worries, plans, and emotions constantly collide with one another. We try to control them, yet the more we struggle, the more chaotic the mind becomes. There are moments when you realize that you've been living on autopilot, reacting out of habit, and knowing very to escape reality. It is a method that allows us to pause, listen, and observe. When you sit in stillness, you don't try to change anything, nor do you judge what arises. You simply observe what is happening within. Thoughts appear, emotions surge, memories and fears surface, and then pass by like clouds in the sky. Each moment of observation opens a door to realizing that the true nature of the mind is not chaos, nor what you might have imagined, but a state of peaceful awareness, unbound by thoughts or emotions. Through meditation, many people discover that they are not their thoughts. They are not the emotions that arise, whether anger, sadness, or joy. They realize that all of these are just phenomena, waves rising on the ocean of the mind, and it is the act of observing, urging you to ask, can I observe my mind without judgment? Can I find inner peace amid a chaotic world?